How's it going, everyone? Data here, and welcome to another DataCast here on the channel. They've been requested by popular demand, and they are back. In the next few series of DataCasts here, I'm going to be breaking down the divisions of the NHL, going through their off-season, and kind of rating the off seasons, saying what I didn't like, what I would have liked to see, slash my predictions for the upcoming NHL 2021-22 regular season. In today's datacast, going through the Pacific Division, I'll be using visuals on Cap Friendly and some different sites. But if you just want to listen along, that is totally fine as well, as the visuals are not necessary. Just put it on in the background, listen to some NHL talk, and we'll go through the different teams. As I said today, the Pacific Division, so the Ducks, Flames, Oilers, Kings, Sharks, Kraken, Canucks, and Golden Knights, seeing what they did do, what they could have done, and so forth. So I hope that you've got yourself a little snack, that doing some little cleaning around the house, or whatever else I can entertain you, or whatever else I can help you accomplish while I give you some entertainment to keep your mind off of things. So, hey, let's kick it off with the Anaheim Ducks. So the Anaheim Ducks in last season, the shortened season, went 17-30-9. Obviously, not the greatest of records. They're still dealing with Ryan Kessler's cap hit and all that. But moving into this next season, they're at an interesting crossroads, and I'll tell you why. They currently hold $17.4 million of projected cap space at the moment. And by the way, this is all going to be uncut, everything, so you're just getting it raw here, going through my thoughts. 17 million. They have their draft picks. They don't have their third in this upcoming season, but they do have a couple fifths. And it's not the worst thing. That's not really what I'm focusing on. They have cap space, and they are holding this cap space with still having to deal out with the $2 million of dead cap of Corey Perry and paying for Ryan Kessler's 6.875, which is taking up 8.4% of the team's cap hit. So they've gotten Ryan Getzlaf down to a cheaper deal now at $3 million for one more season. You know, he gave them everything, but not everything, not yet. Sam Steele and Isaac Lundstrom just signed on yesterday for 1-year RFA extensions, paying them $874,000. So you got them signed on for one more season. Now's a very interesting crossroads because you're going to be deciding who's on this team moving into phase 2 of this rebuild. You've accrued a good amount of prospects. They have, if you look in the depth charts, they've gotten a good number of prospects, and I got to figure out who's going to be leading the charge here. Trevor Zegras, definitely a name in there. I think Lundstrom and Steele are also locks to be in this team moving forward. Jamie Drysdale might be making the jump to the NHL. As not sure, but when you look at the defensive depth, let's say Lindholm and Shattenkirk are your first pair, Fowler, Manson your second pair, Larson's on the third. Who's he playing with? Perhaps you bring up a newly signed Greg Patterin, who could either be your third pair guy or your seventh defenseman who they just signed. Not too many options aside from that. Maybe Trevor Carrick. Not sure if Brendan Gooley. Yeah, I could see Brendan Gooley, absolutely. Axel Anderson, I'd like to see him make the jump sooner rather than later. But they do have some options. So I could see Gooley, Patterin, all these guys. Maybe Jamie Drysdale. But honestly, I'd probably rather see Drysdale and Anderson. Those guys get a ton of ice time down in San Diego. But that's aside from the point. So with these small cap hits and with all this money to play with, they're obviously not going to be spending it right now, but moving into next season and the year after, they have a lot of flexibility to decide who do you want to sign, who do you want to let go, and who do you want to maybe even give a contract to and figure out what happens, because if they don't work out, they don't work out. Because we also have the expiring deal soon of Adam Henrique at 5.825, so it's a very exciting time in Anaheim. They came off a terrible season. I think they're going to have another terrible season, unfortunately. John Gibson, the poor guy, is just killing himself, putting together good seasons without much to show for it. And of course, you can't forget Josh Mahura in here. Josh Mahura is also going to be trying to make the defensive, the top six here. So I could absolutely see him making it over Drysdale, and maybe Patterin's just that seventh guy. Silverberg, Milano, both on injured reserve. They're going to come into the lineup, so they probably bump out Volkov, maybe even Jones, who's still unsigned at the moment. So going back to the cap hits, you see that Max Jones and Maxime Comtois are both currently unsigned as well. So you're going to hopefully try and get them for similar deals that you got Steele and Lundstrom on, and roll like that. tons of cap space, gain back some more draft picks, taking teams' bad contracts in a league where, you see that Marc-Andre Fleury getting dumped for nothing, and you see these deals happening left and right at the expansion draft, etc. So if they could just take on some bad contracts, use that cap space, get some draft picks, continue to get even more prospects, the Anaheim Ducks are going to be a very formidable team moving forward, and they already do have some of these big pieces. Like I said, Steele, Lundstrom, Comtois, Drysdale, and even the guys who are there now, like Gibson, are going to be the future of the Anaheim Ducks. So, off-season moves, though, didn't really do too much. I would have liked to see them take more contracts, really use that cap space. It's nice to say, hey, moving forward, we're looking good. But I'm focusing again on the off-season and moving into this season. So I wouldn't call this the best off-season for the Anaheim Ducks. They re-signed the aging Ryan Getzlaf, and maybe they could have traded him last season for some pieces. It's nice to see him finishing off his career and everything, but at the same time, you want to see him go to a competitor, right? They lost Danton Heinen. They shed the contract of David Backes. And who'd they sign? Like Buddy Robinson. I would have wanted to see more from Anaheim. I know they're not trying to be competitors just yet, but I really would have wanted to see them use that cap space in a league where cap space is so rare. 17.4 just sitting there at the moment. So that's pretty much all I have to say for Anaheim. I'd probably give them something like a C, C+ for the offseason. Just, not spending crazy money where they don't have to, and doing things that, forcing themselves into moves, like let's say dumping the Henry contract and giving up a draft pick. And like I think I said, it was expiring. It still has a few more years on it, so it's not expiring yet. So that's good that they didn't do anything crazy, but at the same time, they really should have used that cap space while they could have. Because like I said, these guys are going to be wanting contracts, and soon that cap space is going to dry up. So it's only here for so long. So that's what I have to say about the Anaheim Ducks moving into next season. I don't anticipate anything big from them. Another losing season, another bottom of the league type of year. I love the Anaheim Ducks. I'm really big on them, but it's not quite time yet. Troy Terry, he's going to take a big step, I think, this season. So looking forward to Anaheim does down the road. Moving over now to the Calgary Flames. They currently hold $12.175 million in cap space. They went 26, 27, and 3 last season. They were really not very good down the stretch. They lost Mark Giordano to the expansion draft. And of course, I should have mentioned that the Ducks lost Hayden Fleury in the expansion draft, who they had just traded like a 5th and Hakanpää for. So that was pretty unfortunate. I'm pretty, I gotta say, disappointed in the Calgary Flames in this offseason. Like you got Matthew Tkachuk expiring, that you have to deal with. Johnny Gaudreau expiring, that you're gonna have to deal with. You got Michael Backlund signed to a big contract, Milan Lucic on his big contract. You go out, you want to make a splash, you get Blake Coleman, that's great. You sign him super long term for just shy of $5 million. So UFA at the end of 2026, 27. I'm not saying he's not worth that today. I almost am, but I'm not. But I don't think he'll be worth that in 2024, 25, 526, 627, etc. Mangiapane, he's great. He's going to be due for a deal soon. Like a guy like Elias Lindholm is amazing. I'm shocked that he's getting paid less than Blake Coleman. Like I understand the Lucic contract comes from years ago, but Lindholm's contract is not that long ago that Blake Coleman's already making more. I know that you got to, there's other teams who wanted him. You got to overpay maybe in free agency, but I don't know if that was the move for Calgary. You got Noah Hannafin is the big boy now with Mark Giordano gone. Rasmus Anderson's going to take a step. He's a very underrated and very solid defenseman. Chris Tanev is great as well. So I love those. The big three right there is great. They trade for Nikita Zadorov. That's okay. They're going to get him signed. So there's your top four. On the bottom pair, you have Welinski, Shillington, Valimaki, Connor Mackey. Who's going to be there? If I go look at the depth charts, looking at other defensive possibilities for the Flames. Right now it has Mackey and Zadorov on the third with Valimaki on the second. But if I look into the scratches, sorry, that's for forwards. Looking into the minors here, Kevin Gravel is an interesting option as well as Colton Poolman. But I don't know if I see much NHL capability within this depth right here. Good prospects for sure. Nothing to say about the prospects. Connor Zari's great. Jacob Pelletier is great. So nothing to say about that really. I think their drafting has been okay. Jérémy Poirier, Dustin Wolf. I have a lot of good things to say about the prospects. But today, the Flames are not trying to be a team like Anaheim. They're trying to be a team that makes the playoffs and goes on a run and gets something out of Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, etc. I am not sold on this lineup at all. I like this first line for sure. Great first line. Coleman as your second liner, I'm not sure if that's a role for him. Maybe he can grow into it. Dylan Dubé did really well. Well last season. Maybe he moves into a top 6 role, interchangeable with Andrew Mangiapane. Backlund as your third line center, making that much money is questionable. I'd probably put Lindholm on the wing. But then, Pitlick's your third line scoring forward. Byron Frazee, Brett Ritchie. It's getting a bit dangerous, especially on defense, though. Especially on defense. So Markstrom's a fine goaltender and all that. But again, going back to the offseason, they still have 12.175 to play with. You say, okay, you got to keep the money because Kachuk's going to want an extra 2-3 million. Gaudreau's going to want an extra 3-4 million. So there goes, 7 million right there. But, could you not have re-signed Derek Ryan, Josh Lievo, guys like that, with a couple, 1.5 here, 1.5 there? And yeah, there's the human factor. Players, maybe they want to leave, maybe they want to be there. But you got to offer them the money. So it's a questionable team. I'm not sold on them. They were not good down the stretch, and I don't know if I see good things for the Calgary Flames this season. They're really going to have to get some prime Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Monahan stuff going. Lindholm's going to have to be on fire again. For the offseason, I am not impressed really at all with the moves that happened here. The very limited moves. Like Nikita Zadorov for that third round pick was good with Giordano being out. But I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss for words here because you would think that either they're trying to make a push to get Gaudreau and Tkachuk to want to stay. I don't know if they want them to leave. They're in a weird spot where they could trade them and start retooling, maybe an accelerated rebuild as well, because you could get good NHL-ready pieces. Yet they don't seem to be ready to make that splash. And they go and get Zadorov and Coleman, which are, you'd think that getting Coleman is like a depth third kind of line move for a cup contender, but no, they're saying he's going to be like on our second line perhaps. So I'm really not a big fan of what the Flames did in this offseason. They seem to have an issue with their identity. Who are they going to be? And what are the moves going to be? Maybe a lot of that depends on, agents of Tkachuk and Gaudreau. You can blame that on them a little bit because, you have to wait for one of the shoes to fall. So, yeah, 35 contracts and 21 mil going on here. I would have wanted to see a lot more from the Calgary Flames. I'd probably give them a C- on the offseason simply because they went out and got, or even a C. I'll give them a C because they got Coleman and Zadorov, but not a C+ or into the Bs because they are really questioning their identity, and they're a very odd team. Like that top 6, no problem, but there's very questionable depth, defensive depth as well. Who's backing up Jacob Markstrom, by the way? I don't even know. And the contract issues continuing to drag, that's what's giving them a low grade for me. So, Vladar, of course, they got Vladar from Boston. So that's a great move as well, actually. You know what? Just for that, you're between a C and a C+. You're at a C+ or minus because I like that move for Vladar as well. A good backup goalie, pounced on a good opportunity because Boston had to move him. That's solid. So Calgary Flames, not upset. Maybe I'm a little upset. I'm not. I don't think they'll be a terrible team, but I don't think they'll be very much above 500. It's all going to depend on Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and the contract situation there. So I'll stop talking about Calgary. That's what I have to say about them. Moving on to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I got a lot to say about the Edmonton Oilers. I've been waiting to record these videos until more happened in free agency. Things like Tatar getting signed, and one of those other things being Darnell Nurse getting his extension. I think everyone, unfortunately, is having a good laugh at 9.250. I love Darnell Nurse. I think he's a great defender. I think he's great for a lot of the advanced analytics. I think he is very good in just a lot of the game, and I'm happy staying with the Oilers. But to be getting paid like Seth Jones money, which is also an overpayment, getting paid Cale Makar money, which is Norris Trophy money, I don't know if Darnell Nurse is quite there. It's a big, big raise to try and keep him in Edmonton. And some people will say, like, oh, well, no, that's, everyone wants to come to Edmonton. There's McDavid, Draisaitl, now Hyman's there. Nugent Hopkins signed on long-term. There's, when you look at the prospect, down here, you got Holloway, Lavoie, pretty good, Broberg. This team's going to be good in the future. Oliver Rodriguez, Skinner Stewart. Yeah, but if I'm a defenseman, who's like, even if I'm Darnell Nurse, let's speak specifically here, and I look around my team and I say, okay, Tyson Barrie's here, that's cool, good offensive defenseman. Clefbaum's injured for a little while, so not sure what's up there. My GM went out and got the corpse of Duncan Keith, and I am a huge Duncan Keith fan. I love him so much, but he is not what he used to be, unfortunately. They went out into free agency, decided to splash around some money, and it was $3.25 million on Cody Ceci, who I got to go a bit deeper into Cody Ceci here because no offense to the poor guy. He was good for my fantasy team. He put up some hits and blocks. He wasn't terrible. But to pay the guy, he started his career, you make your ELC. He was making 2.8, which is a little bit much. That 2.8 was enough for him to get traded around to Ottawa and then to Pittsburgh. They signed him for 4.3. What are they thinking? Trying to get to the cap floor, maybe? Okay. Then Toronto, 4.5. People are saying, are you out of your twisted minds? Then we come back down to earth. Penguins give him 1.25. And now he's back to making 3.250. So comparatively to the rest of his career, I guess it's pretty average that he makes 3.25. But I do not think in the slightest that Cody Ceci has displayed the ability to get not only that cap hit, but that term. 4 seasons of 3.250. That is going to come back to bite them, unfortunately. Now, going back to if I'm Darnell Nurse, I have Chris Russell's about to retire. I have to be the pillar on this team. Very similar to the Zach Werenski situation, where maybe he loves being there and everything, but his agent knows it, he knows it, the team knows it. The team would fall apart defensively without him, so he is going to get paid. To give him that payment, I'm not saying that the 9.25 is crazy comparatively here. Like in a vacuum, yeah, I guess it's a bit excessive, but to be giving 9.25 to him, 12.5 to Connor, 8.5 to Leon, you're putting together what? That's 12.5, 8.5. That's at 21. Plus, you're over 30 million just for 3 players by next season. Throw in Zach Hyman, so you're at a full forward line. Throw in Duncan Keith, so you're at 3 forwards and 2 defense. Just to start the game, to have 5 skaters on the ice, you're using over $40 million right there. Which is, that's when the cap goes up to 82 million. We're looking at about 41 mil, which is, literally half of your salary cap, half of your entire team are just for the 5 skaters on the ice. What about your other 9 forwards and 4 defense and 2 goalies? So, again, of course, Connor got to get paid. Leon's got to get paid. Hyman at 5.5 is arguably pretty reasonable. Nugent Hopkins at 5.1 is very reasonable. And you're going to shed Zach Kassian eventually. So, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But it's just the Oilers, go back to the offseason now. The Oilers this offseason, getting Zach Hyman was huge. That is huge right there. There's nothing I can say on that. Zach Hyman's a great player. 5.5 for him is a really good deal, I believe, to get him signed long term. If things work out with Connor, they're the new Crosby and Kunitz. I think they'd be a fantastic pair. So I don't have any problems with that. Nugent Hopkins' extension was pretty masterful as well. I think getting him that on that AAV and on that term. So both these 2 contracts of Hyman and Nugent Hopkins are amazing. Fogel at 2.7, that's okay. I don't mind that for a third-line scoring forward. But now we find ourselves at $0 of cap space. We still got to sign Kailer Yamamoto, who was a huge piece last season. We're at the absolute brink of the salary cap. Maybe we shouldn't have spent that 3.25 on Cody Ceci or something. We got Mikko Koskinen at 4.5 million. We'll shed him next season. Re-signing Mike Smith for 2 seasons at 2.2 was what was very questionable in my opinion. Mike Smith, great goalie, hardworking, absolute, workhorse leader, great guy. Love Mike Smith. He's going to be 41 at the end of this contract. And, you need a real starter. Koskinen-Smith duo has not been working out very well. Koskinen's probably going to be gone after this season. Who's Smith going to be playing with? Is he going to have to be the starter and then mentor Stuart Skinner? Is he going to have to be the Stuart Skinner mentor and then he becomes the starter in 3-4 seasons? There has to be something in between Skinner and Smith. There has to be someone in between. I don't think Alex Stalock is that guy either at 34 years of age. They have 3 goalies averaging at 35.3 years of age. So, yeah, getting to the depth chart here, though, looking at this team as a whole, McDavid he's always going to carry, so it's not a big issue. Puljujärvi on that first line would be really nice as well. Nuge, Leon, Yamamoto, whatever. I think the forward core is great in Edmonton. Like I said, good contracts for Nuge and Hyman. I'm happy with that. It's just really the defense that's making me wonder. It's the Nurse extension, it's the Keith trade, and it's the CC contract. It's 3 strikes and you're out. That's what's really making me wonder. So he's going to be signed till 2030. Duncan Keith has a couple seasons. CC till 2025. I think within a couple seasons, you're going to say, okay, we want to spend money on somebody else or have to sign some sort of prospect, and CC's got to go. You end up buying him out or trading a draft pick just to dump him. Was it really that competitive in the NHL? Was it really the Cody CC sweepstakes to say who's going to be able to give him his 4x3.25? I don't know. So obviously a lot of things behind the scene, can't judge. But he did score 17 points in 53 games and was solid enough, putting 18.5 minutes a night. I don't mean to harp on that CC contract. It's a bit odd in my mind. It's the Duncan Keith as well with his numbers are not looking great. Not talking about points. So hopefully the Oilers can keep up defensively. They got to really put on a show in front of Smith. They're going to have to really be a team that relies on offense. So, good prospects like I had mentioned earlier. I'm going to stop talking about the Oilers because I'm talking too much about them. But just to say, at their offseason grade, I'd probably put it at a B- because that Duncan Keith trade is really hurting their grade in my mind. As well as letting, who did they let go? Kyra, Roussel. They let Kulikov. I don't know. I'd rather have Dmitry Kulikov at 0.8 million than Cody Ceci at 3.25. Maybe is that crazy? Maybe it's a bit crazy, but I digress. Even Slater Kuku they let go, and then you have James Neal getting bought out. Now they bought him out. That's gonna be 4 more seasons at 1.9. So I don't know. Would I have bought out James Neal? Probably not. That's another thing that I'm not too sure on as well. So that's why B- for the Edmonton Oilers. I think they'll have a playoff season. I think they'll be a winning team, but I don't think they have enough down the stretch to really do anything just yet. Moving on to the LA Kings, not a lot to say on the LA Kings. They have a lot of old contracts. They only have $2.7 million in cap space because you have Kopitar, Brown, Doughty, and actually Quick's cap hit isn't that big, but all those big guys making up a lot of the salary cap. You have Kopitar making 12.3%, Doughty at 13.5%. So there's over a quarter of your salary cap just from those two guys right there. Obviously amazing players, but not quite what they used to be. Drew Doughty had a good season, but oh boy, that $11 million cap hit until 2020, the end of 2027 is really a lot. Obviously, their big move in the offseason was going out to get everyone's favorite, Philippe Danault. I don't question this move for the Kings, but I question it for Phil Danault. Because if we look in the depth here, they have a lot of good centers coming in the system. Just in the center role, you have Alex Turcotte, Quinton Byfield, Akil Thomas, Jared Anderson-Dolan, Elias Anderson's going to be wanting to make the team. Rasmus Kupari's here. And just prospects in general. Arthur Kaliev's great. Defensively, Sean Dursey could be something. Cale Clegg should have gotten claimed. He didn't get claimed by Seattle. Jordan Spence, not bad. And goaltending, I wouldn't say either of those guys would be their starter of the future. But back to the NHL roster here. So there's a lot of dead cap here. You have terminated penalties in Mike Richards. You have buyout for Dion Phaneuf. You have retained salary on Jeff Carter. So that's, again, another reason why the salary cap is such an issue. Cal Peterson's probably the starter of the future, as in the one after Quick. But I don't know if he's really the long-term guy. So it's not time to address that yet, I don't think. So I'm glad that the Kings didn't do that. I wouldn't want them to push out Cal Peterson just to get someone to share the crease with Jonathan Quick. They did also go out and get Alex Edler. So it says a lot about the Canucks for Alex Edler to want to leave the team he's been on his whole career and go sign with the LA Kings of all teams, who were 21, 28, and 7 last season. And by the way, I didn't even mention the Oilers, who were 35, 19, and 2 last year. But now no longer in that North Division. I don't think McDavid's going to have trouble, but I don't think he's going to be having as easy as a time as he was having this past season. And also, don't forget Gabe Vilardi here. That's, of course, another centerman that I'm thinking of. So, Phil Danault goes to the Kings. I think that they'll be a better team for sure this season. Phil Danault is going to be a big difference right there. And, of course, they also have Victor Arvidsson. I think that was a really nice trade. They signed Athanasiou, but it really starts to fall off, I think, after those first few guys. Matt Roy at 3.1. Hopefully he can live up to that contract. Sean Walker 2.6. Tobias Bjornfot is going to be wanting to move up in the minutes. So looking at the depth here is what I'm curious about. Yafalo's going to have to be doing a lot. Dustin Brown's getting up there at 36 years of age. I love this second line of Kempe, Danault, and Arvidsson. Athanasiou, if Velarde's in the NHL, that would be nice. I'd like to see him finally crack the league after he was drafted in 2017. Trevor Moore, Lemieux, Lizotte, Wagner. And then on defense, probably Doughty and Edler, something like that. Roy and Walker. And then Roy, Roy and Bjornfot. Oh, something like that. Carl Grunderson, Elias Anderson. So all that to say, I like this offseason. It's kind of like a transitionary year, I guess, for the Kings, moving from like bottom of the league to like now we're starting to get into the mid tier. I don't think they'll have a terrible season. I think a lot of people are saying, like, they like to say that the LA Kings will be bad because it's easy to say that after the years that they've been having. But I think with Arvidsson, Danault, Edler now in the lineup, not saying they're going to be above 500, but I think they're going to have a much better season and begin to move out from finishing, instead of 32, 31, 30, 29, I'd probably see them closer to the low to mid 20s. So probably like a 21st to 26th place finish in the NHL. I don't think it would be crazy to say that. At the same time, if they finished at the bottom, I don't think I'd really be surprised either. I just think that this is the year they start to make a bit of a transition. They give more time to their young guys. And I like the moves that they made to, I don't know if it's just for veteran poise or for mentorship, but Alex Edler is going to be good for a guy like Oli Mata, who needs to really figure out what kind of a career he's going to be having. There's good young defensemen on this team who need a leader like Edler, who's also going to be taking some of the weight off of Drew Doughty, perhaps. And that's pretty much it. Not too much more to say about the Kings. And hopefully this next season will be a stepping stone into the future. So, don't know what's going to happen with Phil Danault, but he's an amazing player and he's a big catch. So for him alone, then you add on Edler and everybody else. But for him alone, I'd probably be able to give this offseason a B to a B plus for the LA Kings. It's a bit surprising that they chose to sign there, but they're there. And Victor Arvidsson's going to be a big scoring threat. He's one of the better scorers in the league, in my opinion, when he's really on his game. So I'm happy for the Kings. I think this was a solid enough offseason for them. A surprising one, maybe even a confusing one, but a good one nonetheless. Moving now to the San Jose Sharks. They currently sit with $3.3 million in cap space. They're just at the brink here. They have 49 out of 50 contracts. They were 21, 28, and 7 last season, just like the LA Kings. They do not have their second round pick. They traded that one away. Let me see the full details here. They traded that pick away. Round number 2. Let me see this one. That was in the Adin Hill deal. Yes. So they got Adin Hill. So that's a big move for their offseason here. Getting Adin Hill. They needed some goaltending insurance. Not even insurance. They just needed someone in there who they could trust a bit more. So they go from having Jones and who was backing him up? Stalock? No, that was on the Wild. Was it Dell or was it Dubnik? Regardless, they go from that to having two completely new goaltenders, or not new, but welcome back James Reimer and Adin Hill. So I'm not really convinced with this tandem. I see them both as fringe starters. So hopefully they really, they take it and run with it, similar to the Reimer-Mrazek situation. So I'm not doubting it, but I'm just really hoping for it. You know what I mean? Like I'm cautiously optimistic / a bit nervous, if that makes sense. Martin Jones' buyout was big. They're paying 1.9 this year, then 2.4, 2.9 at the cap hits, that is. So it's a lot of salary. It's a lot of dead cap, unfortunately. The Sharks have solid prospects in their system. You got Ozzy and a lot of other young forwards who, honestly, I don't really recognize a lot of these names, but I do like a lot of this youth. The Barracuda are going to be a good young team, and hopefully that just means someone's got to make it out of that group. So I really hope that they have a good development system in place, because that's a lot of youth on this non-roster. Really not too many players above like 24 years of age. So really hope something sticks for them. I like their defense. I like Merkley. I like Malak. Goaltending, they have a few young prospects there as well. So the future is okay for the Sharks. I'm just thinking about, again, back to the offseason. They haven't re-signed Patrick Marleau yet. They have big issues going on with Evander Kane, obviously. Is that going to be a contract termination, a buyout, a trade, what? But currently taking a $7 million cap hit. Thomas Hurdle's going to be on an expiring deal. They signed Andrew Cogliano, which is nice. They got Nick Merkley in there, who's trying to make his mark on the NHL. So defensively, of course, as always, big cap hits, 14.1%, 9.8%, and 8.6%. So just right there, you're over a quarter of your salary cap with Karlsson, Burns, and Vlasic, who are still signed for very long times. Vlasic, I think he's definitely going to be bought out very soon, probably by the age of 35 or 36. I don't think I see him going all the way to 35, 36, 37, 38, the end of 38, going to 39 years of age, making $7 million. Don't see that. Seamex great. Ferraro is very solid as well. So I think their defense should be fine. It's just the cap hits that are a bit scary, and that is what goes into their, I guess, struggles offensively. Let me get back to the depth charts here. And I'm going to check out the chart in a moment, but the depth chart here, first line's fine. Second line, I don't know if Barabanov's already going to be there or not. Rudolph Balcers is probably going to have to be having a big role this season. Is he necessarily ready for middle 6 minutes? Andrew Cogliano, Dylan Gambrell. So I don't see this being, again, Pacific Division. I don't see this being a big season for the San Jose Sharks. And I don't really know if I see it as being a transitionary season either, like the Kings are kind of having. I kind of see this, as another weird season where they don't know if they're going to be competitors or not. They have a few $1 million. They have prospects to move. Are they willing to make those moves to try and do something while Karlsson, Burns, and all these guys are still able to compete? Is that what they're thinking of doing? If I were the Sharks, I'd probably be trying to make that happen, even if it costs some picks and my prospects. I'm not sure. I think I have the capital, the trade capital, to try and make it happen when I have a look at all these guys taking such massive chunks of salary cap. Over a half of the pie right here is just going to Vlasic, Couture, Burns, and Karlsson, and partially to Evander Kane. All these guys down here are making such small amounts you can't even see their names, and that's because of this half of the pie going to these 4 names. So I think that the Sharks, I don't think that their offseason was very convincing. I know that the Evander Kane situation is difficult. I like the Aiden Hill move, but I'm not sure if I'm really sold on Bonino and Cogliano being the moves that are going to push them over the hump. Really hoping for something to come from the Sharks this season, but after a rough record last year, they really have to regroup and wake up and hope that Reimer can be, /Hill can be that solid goaltending they've been needing, and that the scoring from Couture, Kane, Timo, Hurdle do not dry up, / if they do have to trade Evander Kane or lose him, that it's for something and not just $7 million of dead cap or whatever else, because that would be a huge, huge blow. So now moving to the Seattle Kraken. Not too much to say about them. Their entire franchise's history is just this offseason. And sorry, San Jose Sharks, I didn't give them a grade. For an off-season grade, I'd probably just give it a C, because you bought out a goalie and it's a lot of dead cap, but then you got good goalies as well, so that's good. The moves you made were okay, but not convincing, so just a solid C for the Sharks. So Seattle Kraken now. Moving into the, roster, because I can't really see their... I can't go to look at their depth chart because there is no depth to be had. There's no one here yet, so I just have to look at the cap breakdown. So, looking by the breakdown, of course, you have the big names, Eberle, Schwartz, who they signed in free agency, Yanni Gourde, Jared McCann, of course, from the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I do like the free agent signings that they made, those being Jaden Schwartz, Alex Wenberg, Marcus Johansson, gotcha, a little exclamation point next to him, and Philip Grubauer probably being the biggest one. Getting Philip Grubauer is ginormous. People might be saying that he's overrated because he was on Colorado, whatever, but I don't care. This guy's a good goaltender. He was good on Washington. He was good on Colorado. Maybe he won't be as good without as good of a team in front of him, but he is still a solid goaltender, and he is absolutely a starter caliber, if not an elite caliber goaltender in this league. So you get him signed on until the end of 2027 for $5.9 per season. Pretty reasonable cap hit considering what goalies are going for these days. You have Chris Drieger backing him up. You have a very serviceable defense. Giordano Alexiak, not too shabby. He's getting paid a lot though. I like Larson and Dunn. They just signed him to his two-year extension. There's your second pair. I really don't mind Fleury with whoever as the third pair, whether it be Soucy, Borgen, Lauzon, or Chalowski. I think all those guys could be a fine third pair guy, especially though with Hayden Fleury. I think he needs to be getting NHL minutes. The forward core is probably where I'm questioning the most. Yeah, you could say Gord, Schwartz, Eberle. Second line could be Wenberg. And then, I don't know, is it McCann and Donskoy? Then your third line's Tanev, Yarncrow, and who's center? Johansson or Appleton. Fourth line is non-existent, basically. I don't think you can have like Carson Twarynski as your fourth liner. So I think there definitely still has to be some tweaks. I don't know if I see Seattle being a challenger or a contender in their first season similar to Vegas, but I do see them being one of the better teams in the Pacific Division. I'll give their offseason a B+ as well, simply because they did so much, obviously. I think their expansion draft could have been better, as I said in my last DataCast, but for their signings that filled the gaps that they didn't have in the expansion draft, that kind of balances itself out. They got themselves a couple of picks, but I think that there could have been a lot more that was done. I think they could have utilized cap space. I think they could have squeezed more draft picks. So for that, it's not quite into the A's, but it was a passable expansion draft, and I think this team will be solid enough. It's really the signings, especially Philip Grubauer, that push it over the edge, because I wasn't really convinced with Drieger and Vanacek before. And Jane Schwartz as well. That's a big scoring threat as well if he can stay healthy. So it's nice that no one's taking up too much of the salary cap. No one's taking more than 6.7% at forwards. Giordano has 8.3, but that's only for one season. So in my mind, this team should make the playoffs. And I don't know if they're really going to do much like Vegas, as I said, but it should be a solid enough inaugural season for the Seattle Kraken. They just need to fix up some depth. That would really push them into the A's, I think, the A category. My apologies, I could click on the depth. I guess I was clicking on something wrong before. But here's how the lines kind of look like. Obviously, it's not quite what they would be, I don't think. But just to say, like, it's getting a bit, dicey in the bottom six. Marcus Johansson was a nice addition to that bottom six, but I don't know. The scoring is going to be an issue. I like the big names in Schwartz and Eberle. They'll be scoring goals. McCann's going to be a really underrated player who I think is going to finally get his due on this team if he wasn't already on Pittsburgh. I just don't see much depth scoring, which could end up being the biggest issue for this team, because the defense is solid enough, goaltending solid enough. I think it does really come down to scoring. And of course, Yanni Gourde's not in that lineup, so don't forget that. They do have some good prospects, of course. They did in the expansion draft. I like that they got Cole Lind. I like that they got Kel Fleury. Maybe not as a Canadiens fan. And I like the drafting of Matty Beniers, of course. Moving now to the Vancouver Canucks, our second to last team. They went 23, 29, and 4 in the Northern Division. They have no second round pick, no third round pick. They have $14 million of cap space, which is nice, but it's about to get filled up very quickly when they have to deal with the contracts of Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, who's still waiting for his, and of course, Quinn Hughes, and even Oli Ulevi. So they're in a very difficult spot right now. They have $14 million to pretty much sign Pettersson and Hughes to full contracts and to give Besser a couple $1 million boost or so. So I'm not sure if I were them, if I would have went out and gotten, did they sign Tucker Poolman just this offseason? I think they did. Let me look at my other notes that I'm looking at here. Tucker Poolman, yeah, signed as a free agent to a 4-year contract. So would I have signed him for $2.5 million when I'm in such a tight situation? I don't know. I probably would have kept, they of course had the big OEL trade where they got Ekman Larson and Connor Garland. I like that trade especially for Connor Garland, because I think he is such a good scorer. I like that he got signed as well to a reasonable contract. But listen, I understand that stuff. But could you not have gone 1, 2, 3, and then 4 being Rathbone, 5 being Shen, 6 being Hunt or something? And then you have an extra $2.5 million in these contract negotiations? I don't know. Thatcher Demko signed long-term for $5 million. It's a great cap hit. I like the Yaroslav Halak backup. I'm a huge fan of Halak. He's one of the best backups in the entire NHL. He has proved that year in and year out, so he is a great addition for the Vancouver Canucks. Michael Ferland currently on the injured reserve. Not too much dead cap between Braden Holtby and Jake Virtanen. And of course, you have Pud Colson, who's one of the better prospects in the NHL. Jet Wu's not too bad himself. Michael DiPietro's a good prospect coming up. So the Canucks are in a good place organizationally, but that money is going to be a huge, huge problem. And I don't know, like I said, I like the Garland and OEL trade, but do you make that trade before you sign Hughes and Pettersson? That's a big question, because if Pettersson's going to be making, I don't know, let's say 8 or 9 million, that leaves you with 5 for Quinn Hughes, and he's going to be wanting Cale Makar money, which is like $9 million. So really you need something close to $18 million, and you have 14. So they're going to have to make a move. They're going to have to do something. I could probably see them having to give up a pick to dump Tyler Myers, making his $6 million cap hit. But aside from that, there's not much they can do. Mott's not making a lot. Like after these 4 players right here, I don't think trading Tanner Pearson would do too much, because, I don't know, like 3.25 would still keep them super tight, and they'd be down a forward. So I'd rather trade Tyler Myers for $6 million, take back a defenseman who's getting paid like $1 million, and you give up a first-round pick or a prospect. I don't know what. Matthew Highmore is great. They signed Di Giuseppe, which is also good. Niels Hoglander is going to have a really good season. He's going to have to step up this season. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation in Vancouver right now. Even Olli Juolevi, like I said. So looking at the depth chart again, for the off-season, I love the Coyotes trade. I just don't love it being made before they figured out Pettersson and Hughes. And who knows what's going to happen with Brock Besser now. So that's why I'd probably give it a B- on the off-season, because they were good moves, but they just added more confusion to what's happening with these contract negotiations on a team that's very strapped for cash. I like the depth when everyone's in the lineup, like, Hughes, Myers, Ekman Larson, Hamonic, and then Juolevi, Pullman. That's great. I love Pettersson on this first line. You got Garland, Horvat, Pearson on the second line. Hoglander is probably going to switch up with Pearson. I love it. Podkolzin is probably going to jump to the NHL. Tyler Mott, great depth. Sutter's a fantastic fourth-line center. Matthew Highmore is good. I like this team, just you got to get these players signed. And that's even considering Di Giuseppe, Shen, all those guys scratched. So I really just hope they get that figured out. Take out Myers. Yeah, you hurt a bit more defensively, but you get Pettersson and Hughes signed. I'm not sure what else to say aside from that. They need to make those moves ASAP, because it's August 7th now. You probably have arbitrations coming up and stuff like that. So it's a bit complicated. Like, you have Pettersson RFA, but he's not arbitration eligible, and you have Quinn Hughes, who's 10.2C, which means he has not had enough seasons to get the next RFA status. So no offer sheet can be given to him. So someone could offer sheet Elias Pettersson, but I don't believe him or he nor Hughes are arbitration eligible. So you got to figure that out in the next month and a half or so. Anyways, getting to the final team now, the Vegas Golden Knights. They have $0 left in salary cap. They went 40, 14, and 2 last season, all the way to the conference finals before they lost to Le Canadien Montréal. And it was they're such a good team. I think they're going to win that division extremely easily. Unfortunately, that's I don't know if that's really the craziest statement to make. I don't know if that's going on the biggest of limbs. They still have their first or second round picks. They have the possibility to add to it. So again, though, focusing on the offseason, they traded for Evgeny Dadonov. I really like that trade. I think Dadonov, with the right players around him, could be an amazing player. Not to say he wasn't amazing in Ottawa, but I think he'll be even better in Vegas. 2 more years at $5 million is pretty digestible. You got Chandler Stevenson on a good deal. You signed Janmark for a couple million, not bad at all. They have the big Nolan Patrick trade, of course, with the Cody Glass three-team trade. So that's going to come back to really have to think about it down the road in a few years. You have to look at the numbers and see, was it worth it? Nolan Patrick, he has the injuries and everything, but he could be such a good third or second line power forward center if he could just find his groove and just have a little bit of luck on his side. So, but the thing is, he's not signed and there's $0 to play with. So that is the biggest issue. You got to get Nolan Patrick in that lineup. Defensively, it's pretty tight as well. Petrangelo's taking out over 10% of your salary cap. Alec Martinez got re-signed. Shea Theodore is probably on one of the best contracts, if not the best contract in the NHL, when taking into consideration his level of play. 5.2 for 4 more years for a Norris caliber defenseman. McNabb 2.5. Nick Hague is a good deal as well, but he's gonna have to get paid next year. And Robin Leonard at $5 million. The Laurent Brassois at 2.325 is what's making me question a little bit. I understand having to move Marc-Andre Fleury, I guess. Well, no, I understand having to move someone. I don't understand really dumping Fleury for nothing. If I were Vegas, I don't know. Do I keep Leonard, who's signed for 4 years of $5 million, or do I keep Fleury, who's older, signed for a less amount of time, but just came off winning the Vezina, right? So it's really bad luck for Fleury. He's been disrespected a lot in his career. Is Vegas to blame? I don't know. It's hard to say. I wish they could have kept both. In a video game world, I trade Robin Lehner, but I understand this is the real world where you have one guy signed long term and he's way younger, but he's not as good, perhaps. I don't know. It was negligible at some points, but again, the guy just won the Vezina. Anyways, that's going to hurt their offseason grade a little bit. Brossoit at 2.3 is expensive in my mind, and even Janmark at $2 million. I don't mind that, but why are you spending all that money when Nolan Patrick is not under contract, you know? So maybe you can qualify him. I don't know what happens if you can get him for cheap, another 1 year, under $1 million type of thing. But Vegas is very lucky with these contracts, man. William Karlsson signed for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 seasons at 5.9. 3 seasons of Marchessault at $5 million. Jonathan Marchessault. Riley Smith expiring is going to be helping them at $5 million. But yeah, Vegas in this offseason, you know, Alex Tuck's on the IR, which is really changing things right now as well. They're LTIR used. So I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe that zero doesn't take into consideration. The team is projected to exceed the salary cap by means of long-term injured reserves. Yeah, it's going to depend a lot on what happens with the injured reserve and Alex Tuck. Maybe they're able to put him on there if he's not already, and then that gives them enough relief to sign Nolan Patrick. Then Tuck comes back. Then Smith's contract expires. I don't know. So I guess they could probably get it done, but they're really, really up against the top here. They're really pushing the envelope. They got good prospects, of course, Peyton Krebs, Jake Leschyshyn. They just signed Sven Barchisi, legend. Gage Quinney. Who else do they have in the system here? They just drafted in the 41st overall. They got Korzak. That's true. Not much goalie prospects. Yeah, I shouldn't be focusing on the prospects too much. I'm just trying to think about the offseason. So moving into next season, like I said, I think it'll be an easy win of the division for Vegas. I think they're in a tough cap situation. Hopefully, with Riley expiring, they get him for cheaper down the road. Not sure what's up with Janmark, but defensively, sorry, going back to the depth chart, my bad. Defensively is probably where they're hurting a little bit on that third pair. They get exposed by Hagen Whitecloud, but I think they could do well enough when you have Martinez, Pietrangelo, and Theodore in the lineup. So I'll stop talking about Vegas. They're a good team. No one's saying they're not a good team. There's not going to be any surprise when they win the division, I don't think. Just that they're really pushing it close to the salary cap. Of course, with it going up to $82 million as projected about for the season after, that will provide some relief to them and many other teams. So I did a lot of talking there. There is the Pacific Division. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Who's going to be the winners and losers of the Pacific Division? Vegas as well for the off-season. They didn't do too much. Like I said, they got Dadonov, they got Janmark, they re-signed Martinez, they lost Marc-Andre Fleury. I'd probably give them like a B- for adding to the scoring, but a bit of a hit defensively / getting themselves into cap trouble, something like that. Let me know, like I said, winners and losers of the Pacific Division. What did you like or didn't you like about the moves that some of these teams made? And what division would you like to see for the next DataCast? Are you enjoying these types of videos? What kind of changes would you like to see from them? More visuals, less visuals? I would love to hear your feedback. So thank you so much for listening and or watching. All the links for everything you need are down in the description, such as for the Discord server where we talk a lot more about hockey and everything else, the Twitch page where I do Twitch exclusive series like our current MLB The Show 21 franchise mode with the New York Mets, and the Twitter page where you can be made aware of all the streams and videos. So if you enjoyed this one, leave a like, consider subscribing, and there's a lot more on the channel that I'm sure that you would be able to enjoy. So once again, thank you so much for listening and or watching, and I will see you in the next one.